It happens a lot that friends, families, colleagues, and sometimes even strangers ask me, can you recommend a watch? They ask me because they might know I have a YouTube channel, but even before the channel, they asked me because they knew I was into watches. This is what I've learned about watch buying behavior, how I recommend watches, and what people actually end up buying based on my recommendations. Let's dive in. The second biggest watch insight I have about most watch buyers is that they haven't got a clue. None, zero, zilch, nada, niente. I've never experienced a person ask, can you recommend a mechanical watch to me? They always ask some version of, what's a good watch I should buy? Their insight into brands is incredibly limited. They have zero overview of the sheer variety on offer. It's just a shock to them almost every single time. They don't know or care about ceramic bezels, silicone hairsprings, cost level accuracy. Technical specifications together with brand are largely irrelevant and uninteresting to them. So I don't even try. I only do so if they actively ask. And it also has to be that I feel like we have a relationship where I can talk for 25 minutes about the production differences between a case that has been forged versus a case that has been stamped and annealed. On the rare occasion that someone asks for advice on a specific brand, 9 times out of 10, it's Rolex. It's never Omega versus Rolex or Tudor or JLC or Longines or any other brand. They will either want a good watch or they want to know if I can approve of their Rolex purchase. The power of Rolex is so staggering to me because I've learned that the people that want a Rolex are not going to settle for some other brand. So strong is the draw of the brand. They will come to me and say, I'm getting married and I want to buy my significant other a Rolex, or they want to buy the Rolex for themselves. They will ask if Rolex is good, but it doesn't matter what I say. They are looking for confirmation, not information. They'll also ask if the model they have fallen in love with is easy to get a hold of, and I'll usually say no. When they realize how hard they are to get a hold of, they briefly consider other brands, but most of the time they will put effort into finding that Rolex through whatever means necessary. Waitlist, used, or grey market. They will not settle, and no showing them a Glashütte CQ, an Omega Planet Ocean, an IWC Ingenieur, or a Breitling Super Ocean is going to change their minds. They want a Rolex, and they might let go of the dream of getting the Pepsi GMT, but they will get their hands on a Rolex. This is basically set in stone, and I barely, if ever, bother to convince people to try something else. But I will try to convince the half of you that are watching this video but aren't yet subscribed. I want to grow this community and your support means a lot. So click the subscribe button. Thanks a ton. The by far most important consideration for any person asking for advice about selecting a watch is price. Not brand, not quality, price. As a consequence, it's one of the first things I ask when they want advice on a good watch. Because I always joke and I say, well, the watches cost up to $1 million and they get really, really good. So if you don't want me to waste your time, what's your budget? People are usually a little bit flexible with the budget, but usually not more than 5 to 10%. No matter the budget that they have, for them, this is a big purchase. And that's why they're asking for advice. So there's a responsibility to come up with some good options, which leads to the process. And for the person that wants the Rolex, the advice becomes more about how to get a Rolex, where to buy, and how to vet great deals, and what constitutes a good deal. But for everybody else, it starts with price. And from there, the first question is, do you have examples of watches you've seen that you like the style of? 9 times out of 10, people have a very hard time describing what they like. In part because they don't know, and in part because of their frame of reference. All around them, all they see is Garmin's, Sunto's, and Apple Watches. So it's not like they have a great frame of reference. Unlike me, they also don't hang around ADs on Saturdays just for fun. Their idea of a great Saturday is something about being with their family. Personally, I think that's nonsense, but who am I to judge? The approach that works best is that I give them a link to 1, maybe 2 brands. Usually it's Omega and Seiko. And I say to them, don't think about the prices, just go through the catalog and pick some watches that look like the ones that you like. The reason I pick Seiko and Omega comes down to 2 things. There's usually very little baggage that comes with these brands. The moment you share Rolex, people's brains kind of shut down, either because of the pricing, but also because of how they perceive the brand. That doesn't happen with Seiko and Omega. Secondly, Omega and Seiko have a huge catalog. They have almost every single style of watch known to man, and they are fairly broadly appealing in terms of design. The odds of people finding something that resonates just slightly is incredibly high with these 2 brands. Jaeger LeCoultre, Panerai, Nomos, they just don't work as well. They're far too niche in the design language, and the catalog variety is just a bit of a limitation. Other brands that are useful as a starting point are sometimes IWC, Breitling, to some extent Longines. But giving people a big lookbook and telling them, don't worry about the price, that works really well because they will always come back with a couple of examples that resonated with them. From there, we have a conversation about why they like that watch. Usually, it's fairly easy to spot what they fall for, but to boil it down, it's usually these key factors. Sport, diver, dress, or chrono. Steel bracelet or leather. Simple dial or dial with details. Restraint or flash. Modern looking or old looking. Size. That's it. Almost. Because on rare occasions, they don't find anything in the Omega or Seiko catalog. But that usually gives me some information as well. Cartier also have a special power. Usually when people come back from looking through the Seiko and Omega catalog and they can't find anything they like, I ask the question, what's wrong with the designs? What's missing? And they almost always say they don't feel classy enough. That's a code almost every single time. And it's a code that almost always leads me down the road of brands like JLC, Hermes, Nomos, and Cartier. And more often than not, the person that says classy is going to walk away with a Cartier Tank, a Santos, or a Verso, or some other classic dress watch. They might go for a Nomos, a Baltic, a Furlan Mari. Those kinds of brands show up when the price point is lower, but the commonality is the person's dislike of sportier and more modern designs. When they have the money, they often end up with the Cartier. It'll likely be no surprise to you that I actually note what I suggested and what people chose. It's a long list, but there's still interesting data that's worth sharing. Like I said, if people ask about Rolex, they end up buying a Rolex. If I suggest a Speedmaster in the list, it's almost always the Speedmaster that gets picked. Breitling gets picked a lot more often than you would think. And the IWC Pilot and the Pilot Chrono, especially the Petit Prince, is a really common pick. If it's a woman or for a woman, the Panther or the Tank is almost always getting picked if that's the price range. The younger the person I'm giving advice to, the more likely the watch is going to be dressy. Think Cartier Santos over an Omega Aquaterra. Think Tissot Le Locle over a Tissot Gentleman. It's just something I've noticed recently. They just don't go as much for the sportier watches. As for sports watches, if the person is already wearing a Garmin or a Suntour, they are highly likely to pick a diver or a sports watch. They're going to pick something a little bit larger, something a little bit more substantial, sometimes ostentatious, but also something that could take some level of beating. It's actually made me realize how much messaging there is in smartwatches as well, especially more dedicated sports watches like Garmin's and Suntours. The Apple Watch isn't necessarily a sports and fitness tracker for everybody that has one. Some people use it for step counting and calorie tracking, but the real sports nuts are almost always the ones who are on Strava, and they are using Garmin's and Suntours. For them, that Garmin signals their fitness. It signals their active lifestyle. They are not just practical instruments used for sports. They are 100% also status signifiers. They are, look at me, I'm healthy and I'm fit and I'm powerful. They signal optimization and energy and health and wealth, because you need money to afford to cycle 300 kilometers every weekend and swim 2 to 3 miles 4 times a week. So when they want their first mechanical watch, some of those values need to be reflected in the watch. And a Cartier Santos won't do it for most of them. But a Planet Ocean or a Seamaster will, because it's a tool watch, an active watch, an outdoor watch. The material and innards of the watch are different from the Garmin, but the signal is still the same. Like I said in the beginning, people usually have no frame of reference about good watches, mechanical versus quartz, all that stuff, but they do have an intuitive sense for what's a fashion watch. It's uncanny, but they just kind of know that Michael Kors, Daniel Wellington, MVMT just aren't particularly good watches. You don't need to explain it to them. I think they know, because of where watches like that are sold, that they are often connected with fashion brands and that they just have a look to them that is just a little bit off. I never have anyone ask, is this Daniel Wellington or Fossil brand good? They just know without being able to explain how they know. Budget is everything, but the more money people have, the more likely they are also to pick a known brand. I always try to suggest an equal amount of big brands and small brands in a lineup when I can, but the moment people want to spend $5,000 or more, the likelihood of them landing on an IWC or a Breitling or an Omega or any other household brand shoots through the roof. For people with more modest budgets, the willingness to try a micro brand or an indie brand is just much, much higher. It's also not really a surprise, but it's still revealing that watch purchases are almost always connected to some sort of significant life event or milestone. Marriage, a baby, getting a promotion, getting a new job, graduating. It's rare that people just randomly decide to go out and spend big money on a watch with no event to justify it. There's always something that's meaningful to them, and it speaks to what a watch means. It's a statement to themselves, and it's something that has emotional meaning, something that the Garmin or Apple Watch just can't convey. I even had a guy complete his first Ironman, and to celebrate his 9-hour and 44-minute Ironman, which is decent, he switched out his daily wearer Garmin with a Speedmaster. But the biggest thing I've learned through giving 30 years of advice, a good watch to first-time buyers is not movement accuracy, it's not COSC certification, it's not grade 5 titanium. Yeah, they do trust that I suggest something decent, but at the end of the day, what makes it good to them is just two things. It's a watch they can afford and a watch that they really like. Nothing more, nothing less. Have you ever given people advice on buying a new watch? What have you learned about that? Share in the comments, like, subscribe. Cheers.